happens, I think the town has to vote on at a town meeting, and then you get a special request from the legislature. So it would take a little while to do it, but you know, we could raise as much as $10,000 a year, and that's better than nothing.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Just check off $5, $10, $15 for people.
I think so. There should be 3. Okay.
This is.
Can I approve?
If you have enough room, I
have enough.
Okay, then I
That's why I put mine on the
start again.
floor.
It'll be easier.
Yeah.
I figured you're just going to put new ones in, I think, so I didn't bother putting them in.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I did that so
Very good. It's like, why bother
I
putting it in
am,
there?
otherwise I would just
I left all
have
mine.
cleaning and housework, and this is infinitely preferable. I'll come next time too.
I reserved Johnny before I say that.
Yeah, wait till the meeting's over.
That's why I will. I'd like to say
Okay, I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. We have some minutes.
Do you want to explain the process, Martha?
Yeah, we really didn't want a lot of detail in the minutes because Jim Hardy has all the hard copies that he's going to make the changes on, so it's kind of redundant for us to have to put them out as the minutes, because it's on TV, and there is a video of it, so...
And we're going to come back one more meeting and review everything. I would think at that meeting we'd have an official secretary record any of the last minute changes, but since this is kind of a workshop, it didn't seem to be worth putting, 10 pages worth of notes, everything everyone said and every little change. So I think that's the reason why Paul wrote the summary like this.
Okay, the May 4th minutes.
I would move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5 in favor. That you have to write down, Paul. May 18th.
Move to approve.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
5 in favor. So you don't even have to look up.
Thank you.
June 8th.
Move to approve.
Very
I'll second.
February 2nd. All those in favor?
Aye.
5 in favor, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, do we still need one for that one date in April? Is that the April 20th?
I think we did that.
Did we do that one?
Yes. I say, I don't know if it was approved. I know we did minutes and we passed them out.
Oh, okay. Should we take a look at those? Or?
Do you have more than one? Or?
No, I just had the one.
Well, the May
You know what? Give it to us next time. Don't worry about it tonight. Okay, Jim, take it away.
As I explained at the end of the last meeting, there are going to be some policies in here we're going to be taking out. And we'll explain the reason why you got them in the first place. When we do this for districts, there's still a lot of information we gather as we go through the process. In a number of cases, we've been working with districts that a lot of the central office staff do not work under individual contracts, nor are they in a union. Therefore, any benefit packages, leaves of absences, vacation, holidays, have to be delineated somewhere, either in policy or in if a town had adopted a personnel bylaw or something along those lines. So we put those in place in case we work with a district where that's the case. Technically, if the town doesn't have bylaws and the person's not under a contract and there's no policy in place, in reality, employees aren't entitled, don't have any benefits. They can't get paid. Technically, they can't get paid holidays and so forth. That's not the case here in Foxborough. In addition to the collective bargaining agreements that are in place, Paul's notified me that everyone works under a letter or a contract, some sort of agreement, employment agreement that delineates that information within it. So therefore, when we get to some of these policies, will be, I'll say, it's no longer, it's not needed here.
Okay.
But that's why you saw them in the first place. And I explained that at the last meeting. I just want to, again, reiterate in case someone didn't see the last meeting, and I'm sitting here saying, you don't need it, you don't need it, you don't need it. That's the reason, is because it's not relevant to your situation here in Foxborough. And in some of the other policies, we have what we call placeholder dates, that, by a certain date, something will happen. Well, the date can be anything. You can change the date to something that's more reflective of your actual practice. I think one of the policies talks about raises for principals.
July 1.
July 1. Maybe that, if that's typically done over the summertime, maybe you say annually.
Annually, yes.
Versus a specific date. So the reason, we put the date in there as a placeholder, and then match it up with what your practice is here in the district, make it specific to Foxborough. So if annually works better for you, then we would change that and put annually in its place. So, okay?
Excellent.
All right. So starting off, GA.
I had a question for you on GA, that you make, that school committees must realize that even though they are no longer involved in the process of hiring school district employees other than the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, don't we also appoint here the business manager?
Yes, and again, remember, the notes don't stay in the final document, but we have addressed that in the section C.
Okay.
Business manager and director of special education.
I just wanted to make sure those are the only three that we do.
Yeah, I had a note that I wouldn't mind keeping that note right there. It's the first page starting right off. Just so anybody reading these had full understanding. A lot of people still don't realize that the school committee is not the all-powerful mechanism that it used to be. And
I try to remind them all the time.
But you see, if my recommendation, if possible, I'd like to see that kept in and in the black.
If you want to keep it in, then we would add the business manager position,
Right.
special
Right.
director of special education language to it.
Right.
Put them on? Okay.
We'll get you an extra water.
Huh?
We'll get you an extra water.
It's okay.
Here's one.
I guess I can't see. No, I'm fine.
Does that work? for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would prefer to in this particular instance, and that spells it right out for
Okay.
anybody who
And then
wants to
adding the
look.
business
Yep.
manager's director of special education.
Yep.
Okay, add business manager.
Okay.
Without belaboring the point, I think this is fine. Personally, instead of the word personnel, I would really like us to use human resources. The private sector's been doing it for over 3 decades, and post-secondary schools all use it. Many school systems use it. We use it in our strategic plan.
Where are you gonna put it?
I would like to say, instead of personnel policies, I'd like to say human resources goals, and the first section where it says the district-specific personnel goals, I'd like to say human resources goals. And it's just a preference. I just want to mention it once. I'd like to bring us into the, common practice, which is no longer to use personnel. It is, in fact, well documented, and many school systems do call it now what the private sector has called it for decades. So I'd like us to use it, or I'd like to throw out the possibility of using human resources. And I'd also like to throw out the possibility, instead of learning program, where it's stated 4 times, that we say academic program, because that's what it's consistent with our strategic plan that we've had, and we make reference to our academics and academic program.
You want to replace learning with what, Kate?
Academic.
It just sounds.
Where is
much
this?
better. 1 through 5. Highlights
okay.
learning program in each one of those sentences.
Not in 4.
So you want that academic program?
Yeah, instead of learning program.
And what about educational program in the top paragraph?
That's fine. That's fine. I just think where it mentions learning program, we should say academic program.
Human resources versus personnel.
I'm fine with human resources.
Okay.
And on number 5, where it says to develop and use 4 personnel evaluation positive processes, I would like it to read to develop and use employee performance evaluations.
Is human resources
I
a
mean,
department?
I think of human resources as a department, not as a personnel policy.
Human resources is pretty much what it's now known as.
I would
It's not just
never
as a
look at it
department.
that way.
In fact, I was at Bryan University today, and they talk about their human resources goals. I mean, post Northeastern University, colleges have been doing it for decades. The school systems all down south use it.
Just number 5, employee, what was the comment?
Performance evaluation.
Performance evaluations.
Rather than personnel evaluation?
Many businesses no longer use the term personnel. It's
So
referred to as human resources today.
Employee,
I mean, it doesn't
I think
make,
one thinks of a human resources department,
Yeah.
and I
don't
think
of
that maybe
it
that's
as-
where you're coming from. We don't have a department per se,
right,
and I think maybe that's
but
Yeah.
human capital today is referred to
Yeah.
as human resources or human assets or human capital. You don't use the
Yeah.
word personnel anymore in business. It's often, for instance, instead of using personnel, it's human capital. It's capital of the corporation. It's an asset. And so the human part of it as opposed to personnel, which is very impersonal.
okay.
But, I mean, it's not a big deal either way, but
No.
Okay.
so you want,
In regards to the note, where it says that the school committee appoints the assistant superintendent, and I think I heard something about the administrator as well.
Business manager and
Business
director of
manager.
special education.
And those, if the committee appoints a subcommittee to look into candidates for those, is that subcommittee obligated to follow the open meeting law?
Well, the school committee wouldn't appoint a
set up a school.
subcommittee for those positions, because if you read the text of the law, it's acting upon the recommendation of the superintendent.
Yeah.
So the superintendent would be the person who would set up
The search
a
committee.
screening committee for assistant superintendent, business manager, director of special education, just like principal, assistant principal. And then when the recommendation from the superintendent to the school committee would be done at a public session. And the school committee would either approve or disapprove the recommendation. They can't substitute another candidate, and they also can't withhold approval without justification. So,
Thank you.
okay? Next one,
That's evidence right there that that's an important paragraph to keep in the policy.
the next category, GBA, is typically where equal employment opportunity would be filed, but Foxborough does have an affirmative action for recruitment of staff policy. What I might suggest is combining the two
Yep.
and include
Yep.
the EEO statement as part of the affirmative action, but keep the
Okay.
title affirmative action, because it's actually one step stronger than EEO.
right. I guess the
Okay.
question I would have on that, and this is partially a question, partially information. Less than a year ago, the town reached a settlement with the state over a person who, I won't get it right from a legal standpoint, but we denied employment. They filed a case against us, and the state ruled probable cause, and we reached a financial settlement. But part of that financial settlement stated that we would hold a training course for all of the hiring people to make sure that they understood the rules. Have we had that training?
Yes, we have.
We did, okay. But just so you're aware of the suit and the settlement. And
Yeah.
it's something that we should make sure on an ongoing basis that we're providing that training regularly, so we never do to someone what happened a year ago.
My only question, in fact, I think the mask EEO policy is perfect the way it is. I don't think we need the old Foxborough policy. But my question is, the one item that was mentioned in the old is that all recruiting sources will be advised in writing that we are an EEO employer. And is that something, that's usually something that's mandated? That's
Well, it's
a good
also
phrase.
usually when you put an ad, if you're going to put an ad in a play, you put the EEO
Right.
icon, usually in all your application forms, you'd have the EEO icon on it.
We go to recruiting
Yeah,
fairs and we
right.
hand out brochures and say
It
it.
all
So
says
that
EEO
might be
stuff.
the only thing that we would want to move from the old one and incorporate it into the new one, because I didn't see it written in the mask one.
He just said he was going to put the two of them together.
Well, because actually affirmative action is one step, it's one step higher than simply saying equal employment opportunity
I
employer.
understand that.
So,
I'm just saying to make it easier,
yeah.
you're going to combine them?
Yes.
Is there anything,
Yeah.
that's one thing that I would like to see in the EEO policy.
okay, but they'll be on the same page.
Right.
Yeah.
I think she's just
Yeah.
emphasizing that
Yeah.
when you combine them,
Understand.
that's something she'd like
Yeah.
you to include.
Yes. Then we have GBAA, which is sexual harassment for professional personnel. You had this separately coded, but if you remember back in Section A, we had a sexual harassment policy that covers everyone in the district,
Right.
and it is different than this. It's, the one you have in Section A is more up to date
Right.
than this one is. This actually, I think the date on it is, 94. So it doesn't even have the changes from 1997 that are required. So I would suggest that you stay with the one that's in Section A and get rid of this one here.
So
Because
this
that
one
one-
here at all then, or just
No,
leave it?
because it's already in Section A, and it does cover employees already.
So this is 1 and 2, GBA 1 and 1 and 2. This 2 is non.
Yes, yep.
So get rid of both.
Both.
Yeah, because that other one in Section A covers all. And it's actually better written than this one.
And the other
And
one's
it's a
in Section
Foxborough
A?
policy. Yes.
Okay.
Effective date for new employees.
Is this necessary?
I've never seen this policy or policy manual
My
before.
question for Paul would be, the only reason I could think that we had this was for payroll purposes to do sick and vacation accrual and accrual pay. Do we need something like this, or can we eliminate it?
I think you can eliminate it because we normally would prorate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
And-
1988.
When you're looking at longevity and in instances where you may lose positions, would the effective date of employment then be something in consideration if you have equally trained people doing similar jobs?
There's always going to be an effective date of employment, but I think what this is saying is that effective date of the employment of new employee will be the date following official appointment by the school committee, which doesn't happen anymore.
Right. But your question, Sue, it's covered in collective bargaining.
Right.
Yeah.
So eliminate this?
Good point.
Eliminate that.
GBD is the exact same policy as BHC.
So we don't need it.
So we don't.
We've already reviewed this.
So this is going to be eliminated from this section?
No, it's because it's school committee staff communication, it applies to both categories, but the wording is identical.
Okay.
So it's in the school committee section, and it's also going to be in the staff section.
And my only question on this, it's beautiful,
So we
it's fine,
eliminate
but
this?
what
Yeah,
about,
we're
do
gonna
we
keep it,
want to
but
have
use the
something that
wording
says
from
school committee
BHC,
parent
which we already
communication?
That will be in section K.
Ah,
Haven't got to that one.
That's
section
the
K.
That's the school community section,
Okay,
school hyphen
thank
community.
you.
Staff ethics, conflict of interest. This is just an acknowledgement of the conflict of interest statute.
Pretty straightforward.
Staff conduct. Now, you should be aware that there is a code of conduct applied to the individual license, that someone, a teacher or principal or someone who is licensed by the Department of Education, there is a code of conduct assigned to their license, in addition to their code of conduct from their association. So it does exist elsewhere.
Should we make reference to that too?
We could, but that's in reference to the 264 piece, is referencing, it's not stating it specifically, but that's the section that has in the law about the having a code of conduct for the license. It's not the code of conduct, but
The tough part with the legal references is the average citizen isn't going to have what that is and not even know where to look it up. So in some cases, it might be easier to make reference to it
All right.
rather than something that,
So what, we're going to reference something?
So you want a narrative referencing the existence of the code of conduct for the professional licensed employees? Okay. As a narrative, not just as a little blurb, right?
Or you can have it as a little blurb, I don't care, but no one's going to know what MGL 71 through.
Okay. 603C, 26 something. I think, or 35, no.
Jay gets them all the
I don't
time.
know. I'll find it. Gifts to and solicitations by staff.
I had no problem, but I have one question for us. Do we do a United Way campaign with our employees currently?
I don't know, it's just...
Because if we do, that's fine, but if we don't, then I don't think that's the very last sentence, the solicitation of funds by the United Way will be permitted on an annual
It used
basis.
to be pretty prevalent, I'm not
It's a
sure
very
it is anymore.
touchy, and that's why, unless we're doing it currently, I think we should eliminate it. If we ever want to
That
do
doesn't mean
it,
you
they
couldn't
just
do it.
come,
I'm not aware.
they just come,
Okay.
they just
says
come
we're
from
not
us.
doing it.
No, I don't think, then, I think that that's the only thing that
Take
should be
that out?
eliminated.
But that doesn't, just because it's going, doesn't mean you couldn't.
Exactly.
if you wanted to.
Has the school committee, in the second to last sentence, have they ever approved any solicitation of funds for charitable purposes among staff?
There was a lot of it going around
It's very sick
September
complaints.
11th. Yeah, the Katrina, I don't know whether,
Yeah, years and years ago, we had an employee who was very, very
Right.
sick, and a number of employees did do some drives. But this goes back numerous years ago.
I'm just curious.
drug-free workplace. The three-page one is the Foxborough one, and then there's a one-page MASC one. There's nothing wrong with the Foxborough document, although it does include some of the procedural stuff.
But some of it may not be up to date. For instance, under controlled substance,
Yeah.
you really have to
You
say
run into a problem
over-the-counter too. So
when you start listing things,
Yeah.
that's the danger.
Right, so go with the short
Seven
version.
doesn't cover it.
I like the short version.
Okay.
My only question is, and I think we should just be consistent, it's not just drugs. And although alcohol is a drug, we spend a lot of time, effort, and energy to delineate alcohol and drug, policies, education for our students, outreach to the community. I would like to see us title it Alcohol and Drug-Free Workplace Policy.
It's a good idea.
I had a question. We say notify all employees in writing, inform employees.
So you have to by federal law.
Right, so my question is, how do we actually do that here in the district?
In the staff meetings.
We give them it in writing at the staff meeting? Do we have them acknowledge receipt, or?
Faculty handbook, the staff handbook. It's usually one of those posters that the federal posters that goes up on, go up on all the walls too. Usually part right of the Drug-Free Workplace Act.
Well, but it says notify in writing. Is that the same as notifying by poster? I'm just trying to think of, if there's a problem, someone comes back here and says, I didn't get anything in writing, you don't have any acknowledgement that I was given it in writing. So we have the computer usage policy, we require them to acknowledge it because it was supposedly, such an important statement, and if this is that important from a legal standpoint, shouldn't we in their personnel file have an acknowledgement that they have received this policy?
Or have a standard practice, which is just like wage and hour laws, we post that poster. I don't know that we have a poster concerning that. You raise a good point, Larry.
Right now, it's only in the handbooks. It's not something that somebody signs.
Do they sign receipt in the handbook?
So notify all employees, maybe we don't want to say in writing. We just notify all employees.
But if you want it in writing,
I guess when we look at it this way, we had, EQA came out and said if we looked at the personnel files, we couldn't find evaluations in some cases, right? So my only point is, if we had an employee with an issue and we have no documentation, and we say, well, we gave you a handbook, well, where's the proof you gave me a handbook? I can show you that you're supposed to do evaluations, you didn't do those either. So would a jury then side with the employee versus the administration, who has the burden of proof that if you have a policy that says it's in writing, you have to prove you did it? Can we prove we did it versus the employee proving we didn't do it?
Right.
I think the burden is on us, not the employee.
First of all, is it in the handbook?
all the staff handbooks are different for each building.
Paul, is that something that you guys were trying to update? So that you had one that was consistent for all employees?
Yes.
All right, and then how about if we have something that they sign saying that they've got it and they've read it? Would that be unreasonable,
Well, I would
Chris?
think,
Or they've received
No, it's not unreasonable.
no, and I mean, you could put the computer policy, I mean, you could have 3 or 4 policies that annually you passed out and got written
Yeah.
acknowledgement
Yeah.
that they had received it and they've read it and are aware of it.
That might actually even be easier if you had those specific
All
policies in
together.
a small packet and you signed for
Yeah.
that, which is separate from
All
the
right, and then you'd
handbook.
put it in the personnel file,
Right.
so then you'd have,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay.
That'd be much more
All right.
clear.
What other information in these handbooks that you would want to, I know maybe separate from the drug and alcohol, that you would want to ensure that employees had read and were aware of?
Well,
that might-
sexual harassment has to be done every year, right?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
we have the one computer usage, which we have to do at least once, and
Why don't we give Chris some time to look into that and come back with a recommendation to us, instead of us trying to...
Yeah.
One of the things I worry about, Chris, is that if you mandate that it's in writing and you have a process, then any slip-ups, you've got an issue. And administratively, with turnover and everything that happens, it'd be easy to have a slip-up. So maybe we ought to think of trying to do it electronically, where that electronic storage would be maintained permanently, as opposed to whether someone got the piece of paper, gave it to Paul, the personnel file got lost, whatever. We just might want to think about the value of electronic receipts as opposed to a written receipt.
As soon as we have a network updated, that will be a real option.
Right.
But until we do that,
Yeah, it's not an option.
And the other
I
thing-
just have one.
Well, I was just going to say, and every building is different, too. I guess I would wonder, why
Well, it would
that
be
is, why is,
Oh.
but that would be something that
Yeah,
maybe,
okay.
yeah,
But Paul says they're trying to come up with one manual for everybody,
yeah.
Yeah.
which would make sense.
I just have 2 other questions, if I may. On 3 and 4, it says, it references funded by federal grant.
Right.
That jumped out as odd to me, because they're federal laws, but they're also state laws. Is that, can you
But the
explain
state
what
law,
that means?
the Drug-Free Workplace Act is a federal
Okay.
legislation, so
So
it's
what
just
about
like
state grants?
It's just like the piece about, teachers being funded under Title I funds. There's certain restrictions on, or certain things you have to do for those funds to certify. In this case, it's if your position is funded under a federal grant, there's another layer that you have to go to.
Okay.
But it doesn't, if
just
you're
seems funny to
just
spell it
funded
out
under
that
the
way.
regular budget, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement.
To me, it was just like, we're going to
Yeah.
cover all of our employees under this.
Right.
And then we referenced the law. The second question I had, the other thing I really like from the other policy, and I think we should take a moment to take a look at it, and that is routine required drug testing. There was a well-written section that had been at least previously vetted by an
Well, that was
arterial-
I was going to get to that, and that's for those, it only applies to those requiring commercial driver's licenses.
Yeah, the
Okay.
bus drivers.
So does that, we're no longer, if you suspect that somebody has an issue, we no longer can require them to have a test unless they are under the DOT regulations. Is that what that means?
I don't know.
Okay.
But this policy only applied to CDL licenses, it didn't apply to all employees.
Right, and I guess
This
that's
is
the
the
one,
way it-
we need to be clear, what is it that we
Well,
want
first of all,
around?
is this the one you're referring to? It's actually the town of Foxborough, but it was approved by the school committee in 1995.
I don't think I've seen that one. So it's just something for us to, at some point, we may want to,
Yeah.
it gave latitude in the event that there was behavioral issues, the superintendent could in fact require someone to undergo a testing.
Is that true, Chris?
It seemed like that would need legal review.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
think
don't know, I
that's-
really don't know the
Yeah,
answer to
I
that
don't know if we
question.
That's a slippery slope.
I would like us to check
Yeah.
that out. So we'll leave it bare bones, and it's only going to apply, or we probably need to be advised on that. Because you see every day how school systems in Massachusetts, some are choosing to drug test and alcohol test students. So we probably need to at least be clear in our mind, what are we going to do concerning employees if that issue comes up?
The question might be is, you may have to bargain that, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm sure it would have
Yeah.
to, but not, we have, that would be with the, and that's why we have it now under the old policy, so I really would like an answer to that, because that's been bargained for.
I'm not, what old policy?
Well, our previous policy talks about drug testing.
Can you point out where?
The last paragraph.
Page 2 of 3 of GEC, that the reporting
Furthermore,
procedures.
the committee reserves the right to
Reporting
require.
procedures, searches and testing. It gives us, just as we say to our students in our student handbooks, we have the right to search your property. To me, that was the value of this policy. If it's no longer legally current, that's one thing. But
I'll have it reviewed.
You're going to have Steve look at it?
Yeah. Okay, I'll have our general counsel
Thank you.
review that, Kate.
thank you.
It's probably not that the committee has the right to.
And this,
And that's a great to know, Martha, but if we did, and it was already negotiated, and we give it away, and we have a weaker
that's what we're
policy.
operating under. I think that's what we do.
Which part?
The reporting procedures,
Okay.
to the building principal, to the superintendent, then investigate.
When you say negotiated, you referring to negotiated in this policy, you're talking about the contract.
The teacher contracts, and
Yeah.
this is a
Yeah.
policy that's not that, it's from 93, so this is a policy that's still in effect. And we have,
Maybe we could-
so this is, if we're changing our
If it's legal.
policy,
You have
if
a
it's
contract?
legal, you know.
We have a copy of the contract right here, and he's checking it for you as you speak.
Stuff on the index.
Isn't there a general disclaimer, you accept the policies of the school committee?
Be a good one for the handbook if we don't have it.
I don't know that I would, if I were you, and you remember I'd agree to that, you'd slip a policy in later that I would be stuck with
No,
because
oh,
I've
no.
already agreed.
Well, no, it would have to predate, but I thought that there was a clause in there that referenced the policy manual. I know for new policies, when we've developed them, that we've had them reviewed by the union.
I read through these the last 2 days, and I don't remember
Reading it.
seeing anything about drug tests in here.
Well, he's doing that. Does anybody have a problem with the tobacco use one?
No, there's nothing in the contract.
Shouldn't have been trouble.
Oh, so on the CDL one, instead of putting this whole packet in there, what I do is I'm going to cut the policy piece out of it and then refer to the town of Foxborough's policy on drug and alcohol testing for commercial driver licenses.
Okay.
Okay? Just, I don't know if you want to put all of this post-accident alcohol drug testing, and it goes into a lot of detail. Tobacco use,
You said okay.
Okay.
okay?
On the next one, do we require employees to all have physicals before they start, for instance? Chris?
Actually, it's part of their signing of their
Yes.
contract, so.
Do you have a physical?
Within a year.
Okay, but,
I wasn't sure we needed this one, because I think
Yeah.
Mass covers it a few sections later, didn't you?
And it's also in the letter that
That we give
each
them
employee,
their
yeah.
employment
Yeah.
statement.
Is that something?
It's not in the
that-
contract.
It's not in
No,
the
but their letter of intent says they have to,
Okay.
they're required to have a physical and all that
are
jazz.
we sure?
Yes.
Yeah,
You see,
the letter
yeah,
says.
yes.
Their employment letter of intent when they sign it.
And isn't that for our medical,
Just have to certify
for
anything
our
for
medical
good
insurance
health,
purposes,
not to
that it's
have
our,
physical.
it's our
Yes,
carrier?
Can we
It's the
just listen to
policy.
this?
What?
The TB requirement's no longer.
So they have to certify you're in good health,
That's
not
a
that you have
big thing.
physical. There's a difference.
Yeah, but if it comes to my office, I'm not going to sign it unless I've done a physical on you within the last.
Yeah.
No, you
that's
said
the doctor's note.
the employee certifies. The prospective employee certifies
It's
they're
not a
in good
doctor's
health.
office.
It should be a doctor's office.
Maybe we
It
should have
shouldn't-
it
it
to
shouldn't be
cover
the
our- to
person
ensure
saying,
that
"I'm in
that
good
happens.
health."
I mean, I guess my question is, when I joined Raytheon, I didn't have to have a physical and I didn't have to prove I was healthy. Well, what's the rationale for making a prospective employee prove they're healthy by going to a
I
doctor
think in part
first?
it goes back to when the requirement that you had to certify that you were free of tuberculosis
Right,
was in
I understand
place.
that piece separately.
Now that piece is gone, so
So I'm not
I
sure.
think they
Yeah,
went
but
hand
there's
in
also,
hand.
there's always a component if you're coming into health insurance,
I know it's
Right.
pre-existing conditions, so that's why you'd have to say you're in good health in order to get coverage.
Well, pre-existing conditions, though, the insurance
It's just an
company,
insurance issue, it's an issue
not
for
a-
the insurance company.
No, I know, but I
Yes.
mean, one of your benefits is health insurance.
Right, but if you have a pre-existing condition,
that's between you and the
That's
insurance
right.
company.
Yeah,
and with HIPAA, I don't know,
yeah, that's true.
So I don't know.
what could the doctor say to you,
Yeah.
as an employer, under the new HIPAA regulations about the private, protection of the medical records? I don't know.
I mean, obviously, you don't want to hire someone who goes on disability the next day. So if there's some rationale for certain jobs, people would require a physical for someone who requires lots of physical activity, maybe in a warehouse as an example, because you don't want someone coming in who's disabled and goes right out on
Right.
disability. I'm not sure we have many employees that would
As a
meet that.
condition of their CDL license, bus drivers have to have it in your physical.
Right. But to make a
But that's,
policy that all
the
employees...
registry requires it,
Right.
not the employer.
So it sounds like we might be willing to eliminate it if there's not an issue with our medical insurance carrier requiring physical exams. And then there's another point of view that says perhaps we should just leave it to cover all. I mean, you do reference physical examinations in the mask policy in GBGB.
Yeah, but as soon as you say must file, you can't say, well, we're going to have a policy, but we're not going to enforce it. If you're not going to enforce it, then don't have the policy.
Right. We might stop doing that, paying for the
Yeah, for-
exams because
for
of the
bus
cost.
drivers
I
and
don't know
food
what the
handlers.
I guess what I'm saying is I think we need to make it an intelligent decision. We need to know
Yeah.
what the practice is. And is it, maybe Paul would do that?
Chris, what have you done in the past where you've
Well,
been?
No, we haven't required it.
You haven't required it.
the latest technology employee that is supposed to start July 2nd, pending receipt of a statement that says they're free from tuberculosis and a statement from a physician that says they're physically able to
That's what I thought.
provide the requirements of the job. So not necessarily a physical, but a statement from the doctor.
And that's what Mask has written under GBGB. So maybe we don't need the old policy.
And what I'm telling you is unless somebody's had a physical in the past year, as far as I know,
wouldn't
no
stop.
doc, my office wouldn't.
Right.
So what do you want to do about
If I've seen you
this
in
one?
3 years, I'm not going to give you a note saying it's okay to work.
What do you want to do about this one?
I just, Paul, what's the rationale behind asking that person today to do that? To go to the expense of going to a doctor to get a certification on their health,
Well,
if they haven't been to a doctor in a year?
nothing, we can do that, but we have to pay for it. If it's a condition of employment, then we have to pay for their physical. And do we want to do that?
Are we paying for this person's physical?
No.
No,
but
because we're not
They're not.
mandating
I
them
had to
the
get a
physical.
statement from my physician, but the school department did not pay for that.
Okay.
But if we say we're requiring a physical exam, then I
Right.
think that's why many companies and people got away from it, because we have to then be willing to pay for it.
That's correct.
Well, it is a burden on the individual, because either one, if they've had a physical exam within the year,
Then you can get a statement from your doctor.
you, absolutely, but you have to just go and get you have to sign the papers for authorization or whatever. And if it's, we don't even say annual in this one, which, again, most insurance will cover a physical exam. They'll just do it annually.
Do you
They won't
see
do
many,
it
many
more than-
communities requiring a policy like
I mean,
this?
they won't.
Not since the tuberculosis requirement.
And I would move to waive the policy, to delete the policy.
I agree with you, Larry.
All right,
Is
let's
a motion to eliminate it, the Foxborough policy about the physical
Yeah.
exam?
Yeah,
Well, I have question needed, so
Yeah.
I don't have
Okay.
a problem.
All right, so it's gone.
I'll make the motion that we do that with the AIDS policy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't believe that that's legal anymore, although the
Thank
intent
you.
was noble
Yeah.
back in 1990.
And the 1987 tuberculosis one is a little outdated?
Yep.
So delete?
Yeah.
Now, in the,
Just before you leave tuberculosis, are we, or do we not, are we not going to require a statement that says the person is tuberculosis.
It used to be a requirement of state law that anybody working in a public school had to certify that they were free from tuberculosis. That has been removed. There's no longer a requirement, so the basis for the original requirement was state law. It's now no longer state law, so it would be a local requirement if you chose
Well,
chose
why
to
does
do
Matt
so.
reference, you
I
reference
know,
that in
we have to,
GBGB?
we have to take it out.
Okay.
We have
So
to
that
take this.
first sentence in that second paragraph's got to come out. Well, it's going to be coming out of our template manual. There's a lot of little things like that we still have to catch up on.
Which statement's coming out?
The very first sentence in the second paragraph, because it's not as specified by state law anymore. So if you want to continue to do it, it would be a local option.
Got it.
But
You
the-
can always add additional requirements to
Take
employment.
it out.
But the second sentence on the physical exams for the bus drivers and the food handlers are required, so
Yes.
that stays.
So it will be required of bus drivers and food
Right.
handlers.
Chris, what did they do in Framingham? Would they have the TB test?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
But what about,
Again, it's in part, I think a lot of it's tied to HIPAA.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even if somebody had
Right.
tuberculosis,
They don't have to do it.
how does the doctor tell you
Right.
without violating patient rights?
Yeah.
I can try.
Because it's not in state law anymore.
but don't we need to add in about the certification of health, what we ask for in our employment offer letters?
I think
How did you word that, Paul? That our employment offer letters say that you will have a certificate of health from your doctor?
I think we're
Subject
saying,
to, appointment subject to the receipt of.
Do we need to add that in?
I thought we were saying we were going to delete that requirement, so they wouldn't have to ask every employee for that going forward. That's why the
I
policy
didn't hear
changed.
that, Larry.
Well, when you delete the
We
policy.
eliminated the policy about requiring an exam, but I didn't hear us say that we were going to move from that practice. And I don't think we should
Yeah, but if
do
you're not
that
going to have
until
the
we
policy,
check
you're
with
not going to
our...
put it on the employment form.
No, but, no. I think I think that needs to be checked with our medical insurance carrier. Until we know the rationale and the reason, I wouldn't, that's a practice that has been, that needs to be looked at. This was an old, outdated physical exam policy from 77 and then 87. That's different, but I think that needs to be referenced with our
I don't know any
medical carrier.
employer today in the for-profit world that requires an employee to sign a statement that they're in good health.
Yeah.
And they still get insurance.
Yeah.
So, we can check with whoever you want us to check with, but,
Okay?
we can't discriminate against you if you're not healthy.
I like the mask policy, the way you've got it written. I would just, instead of staff, personal security and safety, personal security and safety, I would just like it to say employee security and safety.
Okay? Everybody else all right with that? Okay?
Sure.
And the same on the next one, GBI, it says employee participation in political activities.
So kind of wherever it says staff, you want employee,
Yeah,
recognition
because
of
we,
employee performance?
later we're going to get into, we have 3 categories, employees, professional staff, and it gets very confusing. And where it's generic, all of our employees, I think we should say, it's employees.
So GBI.
I'm fine with that. The add employee.
GBJ, 2 versions.
I like to use,
On the Foxborough one, I just had a question about the last paragraph. School committee members may access personnel files.
Well, they may not.
that's,
I didn't think that was correct.
no, but this was written before the ed reform.
Okay.
There's actually a couple of court cases on this.
Yeah.
My only question on GBJ was,
That was only 20 years old.
do we need to specify here, are the legally mandated requirements for how long we keep a personnel file? Or are we saying that we will keep it forever?
Because how long do you have to keep them?
Like 7 years?
How many?
7 years
years.
after
They've gone.
the time.
Well, you have to keep a permanent record of employment.
Yeah.
But
But you
the
can-
payroll deductions, all those,
Yeah.
that's 7 years.
We should have a
So-
record retention policy.
Are we saying that we will keep a record, some level, not necessarily payroll deductions, because that can be deleted after 7 years, but we will keep a record of employment? I think we do, but I want to ask that question.
think we do.
I know that the record retention policy is actually the Secretary of State's domain in the Department of Public Records, so that's where all that stuff is specified. So you'd have to comply with their recommendations as far as records retention goes.
And I believe you have to keep a permanent record of employment.
Well, they'll look into it.
Yeah, you do.
Payroll deduction, and that's different, because payroll deductions, and that's the 7 years. So I just think, we should be clear which way it is. And or that payroll deductions will be kept for
This
7
isn't
years.
saying any of that.
I know.
It's not saying,
That's why I wanted to ask you the question, how long, because it wasn't clear to me.
But shouldn't there be a
Other than
separate
I'm fine
records
with it.
retention policy that talks about how long we retain all of our records, not just personnel?
you could put it in there. It would
I
simply
would
be
not here,
whatever
I would have it as a separate policy.
But it would simply be whatever the supervisor of public records is developed for record retentions.
But shouldn't we have a policy that spells out what those are so that the superintendent clearly knows what his or her responsibilities are?
As opposed to going to the supervisor of public records and printing out the record retention list?
Well, we have a history in this district of not following policy and not doing what the state tells us to do. So a school committee member, looking at the policy, wouldn't even necessarily think about record retention unless it was in the policy. If it was in the policy, they might periodically ask the superintendent for a status report on the record retention and whether we're in compliance with those requirements. Otherwise, they may not be aware of it, so not think about it. And since it's our job to make sure we're in compliance with all rules and requirements,
Yeah.
it's easier on future school committee members if they know that that's something that they should be keeping in mind.
Yeah. And obviously, the keeper of the records is the superintendent.
Right. So it can just be a cut and paste out of that document you're referring to.
Document's about 40 pages long, so you have to pull something out of it that...
Well, maybe it refers to it, then,
Maybe
but
just
that's just,
reference
there's something that, it's like a tickler for the school committee to make sure we're in compliance.
Staff complaints and grievances?
No, it's just this way down.
I think it's brilliant, but I would argue for the change from staff complaints and grievances to employee complaints and grievances.
Fine.
I don't have a problem either way. Staff, their employees.
Any other comments? Okay. Recognition of employee performance.
I don't think we need it. What's written there, I don't think is what we want.
This looks like it was something that happened in
Yeah.
1985 that caused
Yeah.
this to be written.
Yeah.
Well, it was adopted and then accepted as written a year later.
Right.
And then reviewed it.
Reviewed, accepted.
4 years after that.
I don't know. It's up to you. I think
Is
it's
it at the
good
level of-
PR.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
It's not the
level
level
of
of a policy.
policy.
That's all.
I love the
It's not
idea
the
of,
level of
it's
policy.
recognizing staff performance, but what is under it is so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, out.
negative.
All right.
including the superintendent may take no action.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're right, 1985.
Take no action.
So we're dropping that one out?
Yep,
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, that should be policy.
Professional staff positions.
Now, are you saying this is just for professional staff, so our
Well,
employees?
because if you look at the way this manual is structured, the GC category is all professional staff, licensed staff. And then the GD section is
Different.
what we call support staff or non-licensed staff.
Is it inappropriate to call it licensed as opposed to professional? Licensed and non-licensed?
You could call it, it's your manual, you could call it
Whatever you
either
want.
category. No,
Someone's professional, someone isn't professional. That's kind of derogatory. That's not what it's meant.
Yes.
So if they're
Larry,
licensed or non-licensed, it's just clearer and not
Whatever category, I
derogatory.
agree with you, Larry, we need to be consistent.
So are you just adding licensed professional staff positions?
Yep.
Okay.
Is it professional staff, or we call it professional status? Is it the legal term for us? Like,
Well, it's the professional status is an attainment,
Yeah.
where
What level
Larry's
you're
point,
at.
like licensed staff is what we were
Is
referring to
everybody.
as professional
Yeah.
staff.
okay.
So we take the word
Somebody-
professional out,
Somebody's
licensed
operating
staff
under
positions.
a license granted by a third party.
Right.
So how should we have that read?
Licensed positions,
Licensed
or
positions.
licensed staff positions.
Can I ask a question here before we retitle that? The purpose of this is really, the purpose of this policy of mask, as I understand it, is to talk about job descriptions and the fact that the school committee will create new positions. So,
New.
right.
Right.
So, to me, this is very, it's brilliantly written, but the title does not convey how brilliantly this is written. So I would rather see it say, creating new positions, or job descriptions, and creating new positions, or whatever you want to call it, but professional staff positions. What the heck are you referring to? And yet it's very clear, you're talking about job descriptions and us keeping them, and that the school committee has authority for, creating new positions.
Yeah, but the first sentence says what it is. All professional staff positions in the school system will be created and issued by the school committee.
Well, let me just ask this
That's
question.
fine.
The school committee at its last, in the budget for next year, approved some new positions. I don't recall the acting superintendent bringing to us any job descriptions for math coordinators, as an example. So the question becomes, math specialists, excuse me. So the question becomes, do we want to see those or not? If we don't want to see them, then
Well,
we
we
should.
probably should, because if we're going to put in new positions, then there should be a job description that goes with it.
And maybe.
So if you're going to fund a position, I'd like to know what it's going to entail.
Right, so maybe what we ought to be talking about is before we approve the position, seeing the job description.
Yeah, yeah,
Which didn't happen.
no.
Now, we had lots of discussion about the position and what it
What it
would
was
do
gonna
and
do,
all that
right.
kind of stuff, but we didn't comply with policy by having it in writing.
That would have actually helped your deliberation,
Right.
seeing what
Correct.
exactly the position was going to be.
Correct.
Who they're going to be reporting to.
I think that was part
So
of
would
the
the title
problem.
be establishing new
With
licensed
the
positions?
Understanding those
What?
positions.
That's what's on the table for discussion.
Could you say that again?
Would the
title
title be
of the
establishing
policy.
new licensed positions?
That would
Yeah,
be okay?
that's, yeah. That speaks more to what the function is of this policy.
Is there a specific license for math specialist?
There is,
Yeah,
but you can get a waiver.
It is, but you can get a waiver?
They're talking about doing away with it. The DOE just sent out a survey about whether they should be separately licensed or not. So,
okay, so what's the title going to be?
yeah.
Establishing new licensed positions.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna
Licensed
raise,
professional
I-
job descriptions.
Do we have job descriptions for these new positions yet?
I have not seen them in writing,
Okay.
okay,
but they can easily go into writing.
I would,
the
I
only
would call
issue
it,
is, though, is any position, though, that the school committee decides to approve might not be a licensed position. So therefore, this policy is not going to cover those positions that we say we need, but they're not going to be licensed. So
Yeah, but
But-
this addresses licensed.
The other, starting with GD.
Oh, is that, okay, so
every,
every,
it's going to appear,
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
it's going to appear in
Okay,
each
all right,
category.
sorry, yeah, all right.
No, it's a good question.
I reviewed this a couple of weeks ago.
I would just call it licensed professional job descriptions. It's very clear what it is. Under it, we're very clear to spell out that when creating new positions, it's the authority of the school committee, and that we're going to require written job descriptions. I think it's very clear.
Do we want that before
So,
individuals are
what-
hired? Because people have already been hired for these
What
positions.
will
that we-
happen is, from this day forward,
At
if
once
Chris
approved.
comes to us and wants to have new positions, he's going to have a job description in place before he brings it to us. End of subject.
Okay.
So what was your suggestion for the title, Kate?
Licensed
Because I
professional
did-
job descriptions.
Actually, you didn't have this policy
Right.
before, right?
No,
Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah.
This is
Licensed
No, we didn't.
professional,
job descriptions.
all right, licensed
So one precept,
professional
that is-
job descriptions.
Okay. GCBA, professional staff salary schedules. Now, this is the one I was talking about at the very beginning about the July 1st date.
Right.
And the principals. So if that's typically done in the summertime, you might want to say so you have a different date, or just simply say annually.
I'd say annually.
I'd say annually too, yeah.
Just so period after annual.
Yeah.
Salaries are reviewed annually.
So under licensed professional, under our categories, I just want to test, since we're using this terminology, under that that definition, teachers, principals, and administrators are all included under that?
Those are the licensed
Positions.
positions.
Okay. And bus drivers and food they'll appear later
In the GD
in the GD
section. Although, you could say bus drivers are licensed. That's Paul's job.
That's what I was thinking.
Stole it. Okay,
So we're just going to add licensed professional salary
Yep.
So we're going to
schedules.
take the word professional out and just say licensed.
licensed staff.
Staff.
Jim, you want to do the
I
same
thought
thing
we were
under
changing
administrators?
staff to employees. See, now I'm confused because that's
Licensed
some,
Yeah,
employees.
period after
Licensed
annually.
professional salary schedules.
I don't want the word professional in there. We said that we didn't want to differentiate professional versus unprofessional.
Yeah, no,
So
that's
we would
fine,
say licensed
yeah.
versus unlicensed.
just,
So if you want to put the word employee in, then licensed
Licensed
employees.
employee
Wow,
salary
okay.
schedule. That works for me.
okay.
We use professional on, so we should do the same thing here,
Yes,
licensed employee
please.
job descriptions.
Yep.
And then in the third paragraph, it's annually.
Yep, in both places, and the principals and administrators would be annually. Employment of principals, this may be redundant, it may be, you may feel it's been covered under the previous document.
Difference would be the contract length.
Right.
Yeah, my question here, I thought it was already covered, but my question is, what about other administrative contract employees that aren't principals or aren't a licensed, having this in confused me because I wasn't sure.
Well, it was originally put in because principals used to be in unions. So when
not.
1993 rolled
Yeah, this is
around,
an old-
they came out of unions and went to individual contracts. And initially, it was a 1 year, remember?
Yeah.
Yes.
Then it changed in 95, I believe, that it could go to a 3-year contract. So because of that, we put this in here to ensure that there were not other policies in an older manual that might say something different. So this is a reminder, so to speak, on the change that happened in principles.
Then let me just test. Say the business administrator or the assistant.
Could actually go up to 6 years with a business administrator.
Okay. So this, to me then, I agree with your logic. It's not necessary because we have it
Right.
under the
Right.
previous.
Right.
The question.
The only difference is that in the previous document, it doesn't talk about length of contract, but that's specified in law anyway.
Yeah, that's general law.
The one thing that I'd like to just discuss as a committee is that I haven't particularly liked the idea that in the past, when the superintendent would sign a contract with a principal or another administrator, that there be guaranteed raises regardless of performance in there. And it seems to me that the superintendent ought to have a policy that raises should be based on performance. They should not be based on some contractual agreement that gives you raises in the future regardless of how good, bad, or indifferent you are. And, we could say, well, let's just tell the superintendent that's the way we want to do it, but again, if the school committee felt strongly, and if you didn't, then you didn't, but I just think it ought to, pay for performance at that level is important. And when you have guaranteed raises, you have no guarantee that the performance is going to warrant that kind of an increase.
I think usually what you'll see in the past, what we did was, there was a parameter for percentage increases, but it was based on the superintendent reviewing that person and deciding,
The contracts, we have certain contracts that have specified dollar amounts for year 2 or year 3. And that's what I don't particularly like that. I think that if you hire them at 90, the
This
review
says
would
reviewed
be-
annually.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying that the contracts that we currently write, or the prior superintendent wrote, she would hire you at, pick a number, 90,000, and say, next year, you're going to be at 96,000, or 97,000, or pick a number, regardless of your performance.
But I think part of that too
That was market. That had to do with market. When you look at a principal, we didn't have the money to go out and compete, the $112,000 we needed. Okay, that was a shock to us.
We paid
So what we
market value for
did,
the
and the
principal
business
of the
administrator,
high
there are
school.
certain key positions where what we did, it's not that we're, if we want to be paid for performance, I'm all for that. I just don't, I think we can, and we can spell that out. Where you saw that in a contract, and we, school committee members, were involved with that. We do that up front to be able to
Hire somebody
hire
and
somebody,
give them,
okay? Because we're saying, we know our offer is, and here's our offer, we're a great school system, we're going to bring you to 100, and then the following year, it's automatic. In other words, it's guaranteed that we're going to keep you whole in the marketplace.
disagree
It's not a
with
reflection of performance.
is you go out and you hire someone who turns out not to be very good,
Right.
and you're stuck with
Yeah.
that extra
Right,
thing.
yeah.
We just hired a brand-new superintendent, we gave no guarantee what year two would be. We said, based on your performance, we'd evaluate that, and if it's good enough for the superintendent, it should be good enough for anybody we hire in the district.
I agree. I agree
So,
with you, Larry.
so if there's a difference of opinion, and the school committee feels one way, I think we ought to resolve that, and then future committees can change that if they want. But in my particular case, I would like to, when you hire someone, just like we did with Chris, we said, we know you're taking a pay cut to come here, we think it's a great system, we think we're offering a competitive package, and based on your review, if you live up to expectations, et cetera, we'll review you and make adjustments accordingly at that point in time. There were no guarantees and no promises. And yet, when I see some of these that have been done in the past, there may have been rationale for it, the committee may have been involved in it. I just don't think that's a good practice.
I think it
Just
has
one
to go
vote.
back to the old way of to be announced,
Right.
Yeah.
Or
I'm
to-
okay.
to
I
be-
agree.
To be
To be determined
negotiated,
annually.
whatever.
I think this language
Determined annually.
supports
Yeah.
your argument.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, again, we then...
Because it says that the school committee, with advice of the superintendent, will establish levels of compensation
Right.
for each position.
And that's
So-
where it comes in, well, we can afford a 2 to 4%, but you have to decide what this person deserves.
Correct.
And that's what we should go back to.
And I'm okay with the way it's worded, but we've had a practice.
I understand.
And with a new
Yeah.
superintendent, I think it's important that he understand how the committee feels about it so that he can implement our desires in that respect.
So you're saying that is covered under GCBA, and is that another argument then for eliminating the employment of principals? Because it's already, so are we ready to move, have we decided to do that then? We're all in agreement?
And I think we're all in agreement that there will be no guaranteed raises
Right.
in the future without evaluations.
Or approval of the school committee. We don't want to tie our superintendent's hands.
Professional staff supplemental, again, we're going to go to licensed employee supplemental. These are the stipend positions. This was added recently because of the misinterpretation over tenure, and that if somebody was a coach for 3 years, it was considered automatic that they were the coach. And what this does is it makes it very clear that it's a one-year appointment. And that would not just coaches, but that would be class advisors or any other stipend positions that that exist in the contract.
I think there've always been a 1 year, they have to be renamed.
Well, but that,
Yeah, it's
unless
not a given.
maybe I'm not reading it right, but the next to last sentence, if a teacher will not be extended the assignment the following school year, will remain on the teaching staff, he or she will be notified in writing prior to the expiration of the contract?
Contract for
extended the assignment.
the stipend, for the,
For the
For the
stipend,
football
Yeah.
coach or baseball
Right,
coach.
so that
or the
means,
drama coach.
so,
but I
or the
think we
debate.
post all
We have
those.
to post it every year
Yeah,
anyway.
post those every
Post it
year,
every year.
but
So they
this
have to
now
apply.
means, but this says,
Reapply.
we'd have to notify them
We have to
every
be
year in
proactive.
writing that we're not going to.
And you're saying now they all expire, and they don't
Right.
get
I
back.
understand.
So let's
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
write it
Good point.
that way.
Good
Good
point.
catch,
Yeah.
Paul.
good point.
So, what's the change?
Well, you
We're
just take
deleting
that,
that.
just take that out.
That sentence.
Got it?
So that's
If a
understood.
teacher will not...
Yes.
That's
Okay.
it.
Good catch.
Good point.
It automatically expires at the end of the year.
Then they have to
I have to
reapply.
They have to reapply. So now as we're getting to those areas that are, this language is covered under contract.
Right.
So fringe benefits is all spelled out in contract. Don't need it. Staff
So we
leaves,
can eliminate it.
yes, staff leaves and absences are all covered
Eliminate.
in the contract.
Yeah.
You do need the one paragraph here for
Wait,
the
which one?
family and medical leave,
GCCC.
GCCC. You need to have that one paragraph to comply with the, and I just simply take professional staff off the title and just leave family and medical leave. and leave it at that.
Yep.
That way it'll apply
To
to
anybody.
everybody. In fact, we can actually code it also GDCC, so we don't need it later.
DCC.
So it'll cover both
Right.
categories of staff. You do not need the 8-page handout.
The
Some
medical
people
leave.
like it. This is actually needs to be updated because there's some additional definition language that's been changed.
But isn't this
Take
procedural?
it out.
Yeah,
Take it out.
Yeah.
Out.
Delete.
Some people like to have it there as a resource, but
But this is the one, you're talking about GCCCE?
correct.
That's the one written by Mass.
Right.
So this will be moved to the exhibit? That's what E stands for, right?
The E is the exhibit, but
Exhibit.
it won't, the recommendation is not to keep it. It's there as a reference,
Yeah,
In
but
it
not,
under exhibit.
but not to put it in your policy manual.
okay.
Okay, so-
Okay, so
Not even under,
got it.
because there's actually a definition change going on because of the uniqueness of our marriage statute. There's a definition change going on here in Massachusetts. So until all of that is rectified, I just keep the exhibit
Right.
out,
Keep
and then
this-
they're gonna reissue this information packet anyway. So at that point, if you want to put it in there as a reference, go right ahead.
okay.
Staff vacations and holidays, again, contract.
Right.
Recruitment, selection of licensed employees. Some of this is in contract. There are two versions of this. There is, posting of promotional positions is spelled out in your contract. But it really doesn't talk about the recruiting component, but we did talk about that at the very beginning of the section, when we talked about affirmative action
Right.
and equal employment
So
opportunities.
you're recommending deleting this?
Yeah, I don't see the point for either one of them.
Yeah,
So you want to eliminate both,
Yes.
both the mask and
Yes.
Foxborough?
I would recommend keeping the staff hiring document, only because it helps people understand who is responsible for whom.
Right.
Of course, we can change that to licensed employee hiring, but again, for district-wide positions, it's a superintendent. For building-based positions, it's the building principal.
Right.
So, for that aspect of it, I would say it might be a good reference piece for you.
Right.
And for future committees.
I did have a question, though, about the note that's at the bottom. It says school committees may determine the size and composition of the screening committee.
For those that you control.
Oh, okay, that's what I assumed, okay,
yeah, like the superintendent.
right.
Right.
We can't turn and tell him.
The next one,
All right, what did we decide on the staff hiring, the
Licensed
GCF?
employee.
licensed
Are we
employee
keeping
hiring.
this in
Yeah.
or
Yes.
no?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just think it's a good reference for,
Yeah,
Okay.
just because it identifies what administrator is responsible for what positions.
Okay. Can I just back up for a moment? The only other thing on GCE that's of value there is that it spells out our practice for posting vacancies. Do we still need that piece, or
It's
should that
in
be
your contract.
so it doesn't need to be?
You have to comply with the
Sorry.
contract.
Yeah, each time.
The contract will supersede policy
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah, it is different
different.
depending on the contract, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
They don't
sorry,
want
can we just go back to that other comment I made under GCF? I'm just wondering if it should be more clearly stated.
Well, the note won't stay on the
Oh,
on
it
the
won't.
policy. It's just for you.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Teachers employed during the school year.
We don't need that, do we?
no,
We have to substitute.
Let me just,
teacher
thought there was
policy. We have to
something in the,
substitute teacher policy.
it wasn't the teachers, it was what's the other
I think it is in
category?
the teacher's contract.
And we've changed the pay rate.
Yeah, we have to
And there's
substitute.
another piece second piece that we need to talk about, and we'll come back.
Work year and workday?
Instead of moving to B1 at the end of 15 days, that we had a proposal, but I don't remember if it was a form, we kind of tabled it, I think, where we talked about moving to $140 a day after a certain number of days, up to a certain number of days prior to going to B1.
Have a middle step in there.
Yes, as opposed to
Work
jumping
year
to
established,
D1.
it said
Do
section
you think
1.
jumping up to 140 is too much?
Maybe it was 120, I know.
No, but I was wondering,
Work,
But I know we had talked about that. I'll show,
We did vote, we took a vote to approve, didn't we? I don't know.
We can go
what-
back
right, but
to
we
one
need to
thing.
readdress that and
Yeah.
formalize it.
I don't think we addressed that piece of it, though.
Okay, but you know that if you look at the tape.
Yes.
Tape,
I didn't see anything,
Saving.
but I thought it was
Then the
in,
salary?
tape.
Yeah.
it's in, yeah, the salary piece is in the appendix. Educational assistance?
Oh, yeah, that's right. You guys are supposed to be doing that.
We had.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, we,
Taking this out, right?
yeah.
Okay. Part-time substitute,
I'm sorry, GCG, is that, we're leaving that as it is, right?
GCG is
Going
going.
Leaving.
the question is, under substitute teachers, there's, a lot of districts have changed this practice and everything's run out of central office now. The buildings don't have their own substitute lists. Is that
No.
the practice here?
That is the practice here, where there's a central substitute.
So we don't need this.
Well, it'd be that first bolded, that bolded paragraph.
Oh, wait,
Well, you don't.
is this eliminated? No.
Where it have the
Yeah.
authority to employ any
Teachers
substitutes maybe.
employed during the school year, that's eliminated.
GCG.
GCG, did we just eliminate that?
Teachers
The
employed during the
Foxborough
school
one.
Yes.
year.
Okay,
Yeah, the Foxborough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And now we're on GCG.
We have to ask.
But the bolded paragraph on the substitute teachers will have to come out because that,
Doesn't
It's not our
pertain.
practice.
Right.
okay, that comes out.
so the
Otherwise,
school system will employ.
yeah,
Right.
as substitute
Right.
teachers.
Okay.
And then we'll set the pay rates accordingly.
Yeah.
And we don't have to publish them.
Including extended term subs.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't need GCGA.
Nope. No.
Now, the GCIA, this was added recently due to EQA. They wanted to see a policy reflecting the staff, the philosophy of the staff development for the district. You know, this is placeholder language, so I don't know if somebody wants to take a crack at it and make it match up with the PD plan for the district or not, because I didn't have the professional
I'll
development
look at
plan.
it. I'll look at it.
Okay.
I just have
Just
one
put Chris
question
on
on
it.
that. The leaves of that absence for graduate study, research, and travel, do we currently, what's our practice been? Do we currently allow?
So it
Sabbaticals?
usually comes before to go on a sabbatical
Yeah.
or something, and
It
we,
has, people have applied for those.
yeah.
I know, it's been a long time, so I just wanted to make sure that we still.
The last time we
There's
had one, they
sabbatical
came
leave
before
in the
the
contract.
school committee, and the school committee approved it. I don't know if it has to come before us anymore, but when Mark.
So, Chris, you'll-
took off the year.
Take a
Yeah, I'll
look,
check
see if we
with
can.
Finnegan plans
Okay.
and see how it matches that challenge.
I should think it'd be up to
For
Chris.
staff
not to
development.
us.
Right.
all right, so now we're
Yeah.
on professional teacher status?
Correct.
CJ.
GCJ is correct.
Great.
Because the big date here is June 15th. Somebody is not going to be brought back for the third year.
Right.
They have to be notified by June 15th. Even though so many districts now did reduction in force letters in May
Right. I was going to say,
because of budget stuff, so.
Okay.
Staff assignments and transfers, again, is spelled out in the contract,
Yeah, I thought this was.
Yeah,
as is transfers
yeah.
and time schedules. The time schedules for teachers. The administrative contracts have work days, working X number of days, and so,
So GCL is going to be eliminated?
yes.
Contract.
Now, also, now that we're into GCO, which begins the evaluation piece, there's this whole great appendix to the contract, the handbook for evaluation of teachers in Foxborough. What I would suggest we do is, under this category, we simply take the policy statement from the very first page here and insert it into the policy and leave it at that.
Okay,
Great.
Which is this whole first half of the first page right here.
Okay.
okay.
And that will be the
And that would become GCO.
Okay, and what will that be titled?
Let's see, it's evaluation of teachers. Because that's what the document's titled. And we can reference this.
Do we want to say teacher performance evaluations, where earlier we delineated employee performance evaluations? Do we want to be consistent?
Sure.
So, teacher performance evaluation?
So this is going to be referencing Appendix C of the contract, the Foxborough Education Association contract.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
My pen. So that would get rid of all this GCO, GCO-R, 1, 2, 3.
How much time we all spent reading these?
Reduction in
Yeah.
professional staff workforce is again covered in the contract. There's reduction in force language. Resignation. I don't remember seeing anything specific about, other than
different
leaves of
times.
absences.
Administrators are, maybe it's more than
It is
30
in there,
days.
but it's-
It's
It depends on
spelled
the
out, yeah,
contract.
it's spelled out.
It has the 30 days.
There's a time limit.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah, there's a
So
pretty standard.
that's in there.
So we can delete this.
Yep, and retirement would be through the Teachers Retirement Board anyway,
Yeah.
so,
Delete that.
Sorry, what one are we up to? We're going so fast.
GCQF, suspension and dismissal of...
Isn't that in the contract too?
I believe you're right. Teacher evaluation, reimbursement, personal payroll.
All right, this one also was contract? D.
Yeah, yes.
And E was E contract also retirement?
Yep.
So all those are
Great.
eliminated, right?
Oh, look at all that reading I did.
So is your recommendation also to eliminate or to keep GCQF?
He's checking the
Checking the
contract now
contract.
to see if it's in the contract.
Thank you.
I would think it would be spelled out in the contract.
Unless it's under a different work year, personal leave, group health insurance, sabbatical, reimbursement, sick leave bank, leave of absence, maternity, child care leave, vacancies and assignments, evaluation, personal protections, student teachers, payroll, reductions in staff, workshops, class size, professional development, team management, general, which is not there, agency fees, scope of agreement, duration, mentoring. Evaluation, again, it's just to get the appendixes are the salary schedules and the evaluation tool.
So we do need it.
Unless the title just doesn't
It's
necessarily...
gotta be.
There's nothing in here that's,
Yeah, yeah.
No.
it's fine.
Well, there's a grievance process established, so...
I believe okay.
On
I
D,
had okay, leave it in.
inform employees who have the right to request a hearing under appropriate laws that they may be presented. Are the appropriate laws that we're dealing with 7142 and 7142D, or are there other laws?
That's what it is.
No, but they're coming. They announced that they're coming.
To suspension of district employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the Massachusetts.
Correct. 7142 is dismissal of demotion of employees by principal, superintendent review, and arbitration of dismissals.
Okay, thank you.
Those are them.
This is fine.
So we need to edit this then. So we adopt that one, right?
Right.
Adopt.
Administrators' rights to due process.
Is this necessary?
No.
No.
GCQ. G. It's an old file. policy. It's covered by
Most
policy.
of it,
And is the same true for?
Well, I think this is in part probably because most administrators used to be in the union, so it's kind
Yeah.
of kicked into the same.
You know, most of it's not.
Yeah. Tutoring services,
Is this necessary?
1993?
well, before you say it's necessary, look at the next one.
But I understood why why that was in there.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why the tutoring services.
All right. Here's the dilemma. For teachers who are doing tutoring and are being paid by the district, it's not an issue. We're not talking about those positions. So if somebody's doing an MCAS remediation grant, their paycheck comes from the town of Foxborough, this does not apply to them. This applies to a parent who hires a teacher to tutor Johnny, and the parent is paying the teacher.
How do we write a policy over what a parent does or doesn't do?
Well, here's the issue.
It's
It's the
utilizing.
use of the public building.
Right.
That's the Ethics Commission issue, in that it's almost like running a private business in a public building.
Okay.
If you're a teacher in the district and I pay you to tutor my son, then any other teacher from any other district could put a shingle up and do the exact same thing.
Right, but if I do it, my child is tutored at home, that doesn't matter.
That's different.
It's only
That's
in-
not what we're talking about. We're talking about tutoring for pay, private pay, in a public building.
See, that's where I thought the mask tutoring for pay, the GCRD should be left in there, because that does make it clear.
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah, that's-
pays, it's
Yeah.
not in
In
it's,
here.
again, receives payment other than, and it says through the school committee, through the
Yeah.
district. So they're not being paid by
Yeah.
the town for that tutoring.
So you don't need the first one.
Okay.
No, we don't need the front.
All right, I just want to make sure.
So wait,
everybody-
this one's,
Yep.
But you do need the second.
Keep the mask one. Okay.
Now we've kicked into the GD codes now. So the term we nationally use is support staff positions. They're not the licensed employees anymore. Now, these are the people who, so, are you comfortable with support?
Well, I don't know, what do we, let's kick around our terminology that we use in policy and practice. What do we call support staff?
Academic support staff, there's other support staff that provide assistance, but they're not the licensed professional staff.
Are nurses support staff?
Nurses are licensed.
And I knew that, but I mean, are they considered under the license piece? Okay.
So support
who-
for us here would that
Actually,
be
a
ed
contract
assistant? Who
person.
would this be?
Yeah, that was drug out forever last year.
And
Yeah.
who else?
Yeah, it's out
Not
there under the
food-
teachers.
Not food handlers, this would be,
So who is this? This is the
This would be
secretary?
custodians, secretaries, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, van drivers,
Aids and assessment.
aides, not educate, well, there's an educational aid contract.
Then there's clerical.
Secretaries,
except central office, right?
yeah. I guess grounds, if they're outside of, because all the way in the town does grounds, right? So that's what this category covers, is everyone other than teachers, principals, administrators.
Okay.
Can we just say support staff is defined as, so that it's clear?
Sure.
and list them?
No, well, the other way, you could just say what you just said. All support staff, all employees except teachers, administrators, and what was the third?
Nurses?
Well, principals.
Principals,
Well, that'd be administrators.
administrators.
Do we have to say that?
No, that's too much.
That's-
No, you can say, I think there should be a sentence, either say clearly who is, if we didn't understand, as we're writing the policy, will we remember, when we look at this policy, who all was included by it? If it's not clear, then I think you have to say, support staff includes everyone except
All
these,
non-licensed
or
personnel.
licensed,
Right.
All non-licensed
however you want
personnel.
to do it, so that we'll be able to
All
understand how to
non-licensed
Private, yeah.
personnel positions?
No, because it's the individuals, not the positions.
Oh,
Personnel staff, for example, do you want to?
No, we don't need
No, all
examples.
right.
all
Well, yeah, but the
Licensed
second
personnel.
sentence, the school system will employ support staff members in positions that function to support the education program. I mean, That covers, yeah,
Adding one line isn't gonna.
but to me, that's what this.
If you'll remember, Martha.
I'll remember. I'll probably be the only one will still be here, so go ahead. I abstain.
Okay. This isn't necessary, well, at least the last sentence isn't necessary because everybody's covered under collective bargaining
Wait till we
agreement.
get the revised one, don't we?
Oh, that contracts and compensation?
Yeah,
So that, you don't,
no. So GDB, we have contracts for everybody,
So we
so.
don't,
So this is out.
Right.
oh,
Supplementary pay plans, again, is spelled out in the contract, what overtime is and so forth. Fringe benefits are explained within the contracts. Leaves and absences is explained within the contracts. Again, we already talked about family and medical leave, so that'll take care of this.
So that's going to
Another
stay,
eight-
we're just calling
No,
that
we're gonna-
family.
I'm actually just going to
medical leave?
code the other one as GC and GD, so it'll cover both categories of
So this is
employees.
out.
this is out.
particular.
I just said family and medical leave, and just left it at that, so it's
Right.
all,
So will this appear again under GDCC?
won't need.
That's-
It's in the same, where it's in the same section. If it was going to be in a different section, then I would put it twice, but it's not.
So that means the next 8
Right.
pages
Correct.
disappear, right?
So we're at GDD, staff vacations and holidays, again, are all specified in contract.
I'm sorry, wait a minute.
It's all right,
GDD.
getting there.
Yep.
We're at recruiting, posting of vacancies. All positions are required to be posted in the contracts.
It's a
So that's
And
out.
each one is different time,
different time.
so,
So that's out.
hiring,
We eliminated that under license,
right,
so we should,
we did eliminate it under the license section,
so we should be consistent.
okay?
Support staff hiring?
Temporary employees, that's covered under the custodial one. I didn't see it in the secretary's contract.
Isn't this covered though under
I-
the
I-
substitute, the
I-
substitute policy?
Well, this wouldn't be substitute teachers, but the custodian contract does have a section in there for like calling in people, part-timers, like for the summer or something like that. The secretary's one didn't have as much detail. It touched upon it, but didn't have as much detail as the custodial one, so maybe the next contract, if that's an issue, you might want to address it, but I think you're okay with getting rid of this. Okay. Because the way you're going to use mostly temporary employees would be the custodians.
You know what's really ironic is that last sentence,
Qualified veteran, Foxborough, look at preference.
how can you do that?
Well,
Sure you
you
can.
used to have police officers, remember, you had to live in
Yeah, but this was
Well, did you see the
1977.
proposal from
Yeah,
Matt
that's
for
what it was.
the Wampanoag Act for
1977.
Middleborough?
What?
Members of the tribe will give first preference. Residents of Middleborough will be given second preference for employment in the casino.
Well, they're doing anything to get it in.
Probation is spelled out in the contracts, and it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some are 90 days,
Yeah.
right?
Assignments and transfers are spelled out within the contract. Time schedules are spelled out within the contract in much more detail than this says. There is some evaluation language in each of the contracts
Yeah.
for
So you don't
support
need
staff.
Evaluation?
Promotions are also, promotional positions are also spelled out and have posting requirements. Retirement is in the contracts as well because they're not in the teachers' retirement thing. Suspension and dismissal. Oh, that's a good one. That one doesn't, huh?
Didn't Chris, Dr. Varnish, you said you were going to look at that? You thought the language was okay under the licensed employee section?
Yeah, there was language in the,
Yeah.
So whatever appears under licensed employees, we should make sure appears again in this section?
Does it govern the contract?
probation, I think it's part of the probationary period language.
Yeah. Is that true about the bus drivers, Paul?
I don't believe so.
No, I didn't.
No.
Yeah, that's kind of, go month to month. I wouldn't take the job.
Yeah,
That's not,
I think the professional one was more on due
Yeah.
process. This
Right.
isn't really due process, John.
Right,
So
right.
this can be eliminated?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would take this one out.
yeah. That's really comfortable.
And then finish at the G's.
Does everybody have their H's?
Yes.
Yeah.
All 5 or 6 of them?
Right.
Well, there's actually a reason that there aren't that many policies, is because there's so much case law in and around labor agreements, is that there's very little discretion
That you can do.
what you have to do in policy aspect of it. The very first one is simply H. It's an overview of, pretty much tries to explain why there's very little policy in this section, but it typically won't stay. It's for your information.
Right.
It won't stay in the final document.
Oh, good. So
This
it's kind of
one-
eliminated.
No.
Big on.
Negotiation goals, HA.
I thought it was a beautiful thing.
Anything?
Adopt,
HB,
right?
legal status, again identifying that it is the school committee who is responsible for negotiating with employees of the school district. Contract administration,
This was confusing, I'm not sure we need it if we've just done the whole section. 'Cause it's in each of the contracts, right? Or what group are we referring to
Well,
in contract administration?
all
For the old
contracts.
policy.
This is applying to all contracts, and
But it says the employees represented by the Foxborough Education Association. Are all employees represented by the Foxborough
No.
Education?
No, we're
Association?
not anymore, because administration isn't part of
I
that.
thought,
This is outdated.
I thought the first paragraph was good, except for the Foxborough Teacher Association, and that could be actually put under school committee negotiating agents, because it's our statement
actually just say
saying, we'd like to
person of the
recognize
committee and
this,
the employees is to provide.
represented, yeah, or those, represented
Employees
by a bargaining
represented.
unit.
To provide, yeah, represented by a
Bargaining unit. If you think we need it.
Well,
And there could be some employees who choose not to join the bargaining unit.
But you don't have a
This would
bargaining
be
unit
under-
for,
this section is
informal
for
bargaining
negotiations,
units.
Yeah.
let me,
If there's value in having that statement,
there's one
it's
sentence in here
worthwhile.
I think is very important. It says the committee is responsible for establishing policies for the administration and management of the schools. The superintendent is responsible for implementing the policies so established. Right, that's one aspect of it.
Yeah.
But the other thing, the school committee holds the administrator under the direction of the superintendent, who is responsible for ensuring that no action and power, blah, blah, blah. Directs the superintendent to develop written procedures. What the committee is doing is it's naming the superintendent as their agent for implementing the contract in those statements. So you negotiated it, and then here you go, administer it.
Right.
Now, the reason I'm saying that is I'm working with two different districts where the teachers' union is looking to bypass the superintendent altogether and say, hey, we negotiated this contract with the school committee, not you. So we'll address all of our issues with the school committee. We will not talk to administration.
That's a good
So
relationship.
by having those type of statements there, in fact, they actually wrote a letter saying that under contract law, you have no right to interpret the contract, when in fact, state law very clearly says the superintendent administers the contract. So there's that little contest going on in a couple of districts, and not unlikely they're entering bargaining, so.
So you'd like to at least have those two paragraphs?
Yeah, it's something,
Right,
I think it would serve you well for future reference to have those type of statements in there, that you have the expectation that superintendent of schools administers the contract.
So it's the first one will be
may wanna
included,
put it
and then
in
the
as
three lines
the
that
new
say
updates.
the school
Yeah,
committee, the
we actually are.
superintendent, employees.
There's a new, we're actually drafting a new template
You can use our
policy.
language.
So it's just these three.
And credit it?
I don't know.
So these three will be put on school committee negotiating agents? Or you're saying leave this with just that.
I kind of leave the whole thing as it is, if that's okay. It's an existing policy, it's
Yeah.
been in place for a long time, and I think you can hang your hat on that. Hey, we've had this in place since 1987. So this
Well,
is,
that's
76.
well, 76, but you have to go with
31
the last date. You always have to go by the last
That was
date.
probably 1776 when the policy was
But we are changing the first sentence to
good now, it's
bargaining
good now.
unit.
Yes, we're taking out the specific reference to the
Yeah, the-
Education Association,
yeah.
add it by bargaining unions. And so anywhere the Education Association applies, we'll replace that with bargaining unions.
Okay.
Good.
And I think that would set you up to be in a solid position in the future.
That's good.
Only it will then read our 2007 date.
Right, yeah.
Well, the 2007 date won't appear on every page. It'll be in the footer,
Right.
on the bottom of the
Yeah.
page.
On the final page.
Right.
And then any future amendments you do, you put that there.
Right.
Because where it says
Okay,
Foxborough
but
Public Schools.
Would we leave this?
Yeah, oh, yeah, you got to keep the history of your existing
Keep the history
policies.
of the existing policies.
Yeah,
But all
absolutely.
policies will be 2007 unless at the beginning of
But
2008 we
even the
revise
old
one.
one, right, exactly.
Yeah.
If you revise one later.
So
you
then it
have
will
a different
read
date on it.
2007,
All you do is
2008 at that
update
point.
HF,
HF.
just that you have the right to go hire labor counsel.
Right.
So it
And
is.
Sounds good to me.
And it's your right, if you want to do it, you can do it. You don't need anybody's permission, other than funding.
Okay, who can speed read? No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, this is great. We've got
Here you go.
25 minutes. All right, this is.
Actually, we finished.
We're talking about hot off the press.
Yes.
Feel it? It's hot.
All right, so I will, as a recap, I will look at the drug-free workplace piece, have our general counsel look at those pieces about searches and testing and those procedures as far as requiring people to take a drug test. Okay?
Oh, you take those, the minutes and give them to whoever, whatever, on the
Web.
whatever.
Yeah, and I have my notes from the draft from, that was May 4th. I don't know, do we approve April 24th?
No, the minutes do not
We're
reflect
gonna look
it.
at it.
The minutes don't reflect approval, so we'll
I
need
thought
to
we were-
approve those
yeah.
separately.
He's gonna bring it in.
Are we getting another section tonight too, or just that one?
That's one section.
Okay.
It's pretty,
Pretty big.
That's the only.
Right, okay.
Hey, we made
All right.
pretty good work of G.
so we do I, then J we'll do by ourselves because it's about the same size.
Right,
Well, the reason I gave you G and H is because H was only 5 pages, that's why you
Yeah, he
get two.
snuck it in there.
right.
But if H was the same size as this one, you probably would have got G by itself too. So,
All right, so this one is I.
Question one.
So
this has everything to do with instruction.
we're one session behind, so we need to add one session in order to finish this? Because tonight was supposed to be I. So we need to add one more meeting.
I could add it at the end, right?
Yeah.
See how we do.
Now, how big is J?
Same size as I. But K and L is small.
K and L.
Yeah.
All right.
Can we maybe get those and we could?
Now, is there any possibility
I
that we
could
will
get
be
you
able?
J, but I can't get you K and L right now.
Okay,
J's done.
okay.
Should
but-
we get J too
Ooh,
then?
could you,
go
maybe,
send it to
you know, when I think
You can
about the time to go over, if there are some that you think should be eliminated, that we could kind of,
I can do it for J. I mean, I've
you
already
could
given you
mention that
that.
might save some time, because sometimes we're rehashing.
There's very little in section I that
Just gonna
you're going to
move it.
want to take out. Now,
Okay.
let me ask you this question and before I do that for section J. There are some things that are in handbooks that are also in your policy book.
So then,
In some cases, they don't match. So you got to change the policy language anyway because the last vote you took is the handbook.
so you're writing that down the bottom, what we have to
I'll make a notation on it.
That would be
I've already done
helpful.
that. Now,
If you-
here's the question. If it's in the handbook and you vote handbooks,
We don't need to put it in the policy,
do
do we?
you need it, do you also want it in the policy manual?
Well, because they're constantly updating the handbooks.
The handbook
So
is
that
the most
means-
up-to-date document in the
So
district.
So then you
so
don't
that
want it
we-
in the policy.
Can we
We
just
don't want it
reference
in-
that is our policy as we vote that is in fact our policy?
that we
Once
approve
voted, that
annually.
becomes our policy.
Well, because, yeah, by voting it, the handbook becomes de facto district
Yeah,
policy.
but I'd like us to say that, of just,
Well, there's a section for student handbooks, so that
make
policy
reference
would
to that.
reflect that.
I would be very comfortable with that.
So do you mind if I kind of take those separate and maybe paperclip them together and say, hey,
Absolutely.
look,
Absolutely.
these are
That would-
handbook items, maybe
Yes,
That'd be
if there's anything in there you
Thank you.
want?
because I think everyone's very comfortable with that
Okay.
approach.
That's easy enough to do. I can do that.
great.
Deborah?
I'll actually make the copies for you, that way it's easier.
Perfect.
You don't have to worry about it. I'll put them on 3-hole front paper. I'll be able to paper clip them
Committee this
together.
evening chose to eliminate a lot of the text in policy GCO, which talks about administrator evaluation. And if recently the EQA specifically said that there's a lack of evaluations that have taken place in the Foxborough district, and if contracts, especially administrator contracts that currently exist, don't have appropriate language for evaluation as described in the sample policies provided by MASC, why are we removing the detailed description of what the DOE and the regulations require in terms of administrator evaluation? I'd like the committee to please reconsider or go back and revisit the administrator evaluation policy, GCO, before eliminating all the references to it. At least make sure the contracts are up to date and reflect the language that was eliminated.
Why not just approve a policy that requires annual evaluations and outline the process that's described in the EQA audit? So that the superintendent knows clearly that it's our expectation that every evaluation, every employee that should be evaluated will be evaluated at least annually, and it will follow the guidelines as outlined in the EQA, professional practices of evaluating employees, or whatever the exact language was that it had in there.
If that's
Isn't the
sufficient,
language in the
if that
contract
language covers,
Isn't that the language in their contract that they'll be evaluated?
Would it be okay if I melded this piece in here that's in the teachers? Since the purpose of the principles of effective teaching predicated on the Massachusetts Department of Education principles of effective teaching and evaluation procedure, and then we could add the principles of effective administration language for administrators, and wherever it says evaluation of teacher and, you can say teacher and administrator performance, so that the one policy will take
Both of them.
both people. I'll use the template from your teacher handbook
Right.
and simply add in the
Administrator.
administrator's component
And then
as
the two
well.
references to the EQA that you just quoted.
I didn't quote the EQ. Principles of effective administration.
That's what's quoted in there. That's what they wrote us up for, not following that.
Yep.
So that would, I think that addresses your issue.
Thank you.
I think it's addressed under their contract anyways, that they're supposed to be evaluated.
But the administrators.
But now, what your policy is going to say is based on the principles of effective administration adopted by the Mass Department of Education.
Right, which is the DOE language, so
Right.
there can be no misunderstanding.
And it's
Correct.
actually the same legal reference that's spelled out in this piece here is 603 CMR 35.00.
Okay.
It's all within the same
Right.
regulation.
Now, I guess, let me just ask a question. From a school committee fiduciary responsibility viewpoint, that particular policy, or pick any particular policies, we've delegated lots of things to the superintendent to do. Now, to me, the school committees, if you look at the EQA report, they did not just criticize the former superintendent, they criticized the school committee as well, because we have a fiduciary responsibility to see that that happens. So I think at some point, the school committee needs to decide, how do we satisfy ourselves that that happens? Is it an annual certification from the superintendent that says, I've done all these things? Is it a periodic engagement of someone coming in, making sure that it's been done? But ultimately, if we're responsible, so when EQA goes back in 2 years or 5 years or 7 years, there's a, they've already said we have this fiduciary responsibility to make sure that these things happen. So I think we have to think through, how do we want to take responsibility for making that happen? One way would be an annual certification, And then if it turns out that the superintendent certified incorrectly or improperly or dishonestly, then that's a separate issue to deal with. Or the committee could agree in policy that once a year, every 2 years, at some periodic point in time, that they'll hire someone to come in and do a mini EQA and make sure that we're in full compliance. But I think the committee should decide that.
Well, the teachers with professional status process is a 4-year cycle.
Right.
And I think it would be fair to simply ask for some sort of recognition from administration that in accordance with the detail in this handbook, was this year's cycle completed? And an acknowledgement that yes or no, that the cycle, as specified in your evaluation instrument, was completed.
Well, I think that,
Whether you get that in writing or some sort of report, obviously they couldn't share the details of the evaluation.
No.
But
I think one of the things EQA was saying is the school committee has to step up to take responsibility for its proper oversight in making sure that these things that either policies say should happen or good practices should happen, in fact, are happening.
so why shouldn't
I'm
it
not
be
trying to-
goals and objectives?
Pardon me?
Why shouldn't it come under goals and objectives for the superintendent?
You could have a goal that says you're going to comply with all the policies, but that's usually not a goal in someone's. I mean, that's kind of a given. You know, you want to have those.
That's part of the job description.
Right, but all I'm saying is we had it as part of the prior superintendent's job description, and it never happened. And the committee wasn't making sure that it happened. So I'm asking this school committee, what do we want to do? I mean, it's no doubt no reflection on Chris at all, but what do we want to do to fulfill our fiduciary responsibility and make sure that that the superintendent, whoever that might be, is in compliance with all of the policies that we've directed? And in fact, in the past, that hasn't been the case. So how do we want to avoid what we just went through?
Are you suggesting a policy?
No.
A policy
No.
from our policies to ensure?
No.
I'm suggesting the school committee take a discussion item and reach an agreement as to how do we want to honor our fiduciary responsibility. Do we want to do it by asking for a certification from the superintendent and accepting that as is? Do we want to periodically have somebody come in? Or do you want to do nothing? Do you just want to do what we've done for the last 10 years?
No, we've
No,
talked
we gotta
about
do
having
something.
goals for the school committee. I would put your issue under,
One of the goals, that we ensure that we are,
Yeah.
we are
You know, I don't know if-
supervising the compliance of...
Larry, do you want to set up a committee to take a look at that, or just have it on the agenda to discuss it?
I brought it up for everybody to think about how
We should
you
have
might
goals.
want to do it. We should bring it up before the policy meetings are all done. We ought to revisit that topic and ask, and then come to a consensus as to how the committee thinks it would like to proceed going forward.
How about this? Each one of us is going to be sitting down with the superintendent and whatever, discussing things. Why don't we're going to be meeting with them individually and then come back as a committee and discuss how we want to move forward.
I don't think, any way we want to do it, I just wanted to put it on the table first.
I think it's an important point, Larry, absolutely. We need to come, like you said, as a consensus, because we don't want history to repeat itself.
Right.
Well, I think we have a very
usually as part of the
administrator coming
annual
in that knows
evaluation
the job
process,
description.
or the end-of-year discussion, there'll be
Well, I'm
a
not trying to be
couple of little
critical of
different
anyone else. I'm just saying,
One of them might be
let's put a process in place that
evaluation.
is fair and
This
reasonable
year,
forever,
X
or
number
for whatever
of staff
period
was
of time.
scheduled
It's hard to
for
say whether we
phase,
want someone to come
whatever.
in to do that, not knowing,
And-
one, the cost, two, what that would entail, I mean, I think that would have to be explored to see what our
With a
options
4-year
are.
cycle
we
would
state
be
that
how
as a
many
goal
people
for
are in each
ourselves,
cycle.
we will make sure
Because
it's
obviously
done.
not
Because
everyone,
we have
not
written goals.
everyone
Right.
We should
will
have
want,
goals.
where they split the staff up and
I think we're supposed to have goals.
Did we need to do anything else on the agenda? Our last
Yes.
meeting,
Yeah,
we
we have
deferred
one other
this
thing, but I don't think
surplus vote, or?
there isn't.
Surplus? The update,
finish on everybody or do you
vote,
want?
or whatever.
There's no further updates.
Start everybody.
I haven't provided a further update.
Yeah.
I'm expecting the surplus to come in ultimately between,
We started everybody on
we'll
the-
finish up the other 50 and 70,000.
How much?
between 50 and 70,000.
And you're proposing return the entire amount to the town?
Yes.
Then first year professional.
And we've taken care of
This is
lots of
consultant,
special-
Summary, but no observations.
But where do we stand with the defibrillator? I mean, have we voted on everything as we went along, but is there anything else that we need to still vote on?
The
At the start of the year, one of them
defibrillators,
for your
it was
cycle.
decided that we
And
would
then
fund those out of
observations
either
are
athletic
four.
revolving or building
Self-eval
rental,
is 1 and
as
3.
well as the radios, as well as the
Observations.
potential callback system.
And the security investigation.
And the security as we
consultant.
come
So there's
back
no
with
other
proposals.
So there's no
outstanding
other-
item that needs to be dispositioned on that?
Nobody needs paper or any of that stuff.
No, we're all set.
We started them
Okay.
on the actual year.
Could I bring up something, seeing as we're all here and in a public meeting, just so that I won't forget it? When I was in junior high, I was elected to Junior National Honor Society, and I would love us to institute that sometime, and one of the things I'd like to talk to you about, Chris, to have a Junior National Honor Society in the Ahern School. I'd like to, I think it still exists. I'd like us to, I'd like us to look at that, because if it still exists, I'd like very much. And the juniors get selected, and they're all seniors. I think there is a provision somewhere, so I don't know whether you would do it, I would do this, or a National Honor Society advisor do it, to, for very qualified students, perhaps have a sophomore, so that you don't get tapped as juniors and you all exit as seniors, if there could be some crossover. I think there are provisions somewhere, so underclassmen. So I'd like us to look into that.
Anything else? We're all to the policies.
Any other
Question,
questions?
Paul, you had asked
There's a
us for
question
some
from the public.
feedback and information.
About what?
Paul, last meeting, you had asked us that you needed some information and some feedback on the table, and that you needed to move forward. Or you got everything you needed, so you
It's
all
over
set?
there.
It's over there on the floor.
It's still a work in progress, but
Yeah.
But this,
You had mine, I didn't know if you needed anything else.
yeah, thank you.
Martha Lorraine has questions.
I walked on it.
More comment, really. I was just listening to some of the side discussions, going back to Larry's comments on the school committee making a decision as to how you would be accountable for seeing that all of these aspects that were raised by I think my perspective is both ideas are great. In terms of having an annual certification, I think administratively in other industries, that's a requirement. You know, you're held accountable, or whoever your managers are held accountable for 100% compliance with annual evaluations and going down the whole list, policy updates, things like that. But I think having an outside pair of eyes is what really keeps you honest. Many industries bring in that outside pair of eyes unannounced. Usually it's announced, but it really keeps things up to date in a really efficient and effective way.
I would only disagree with the word honest.
Well,
That-
I know.
But I know what you meant. I know, it keeps you on your toes.
Exactly.
Right. So he doesn't do everything the last day of the fiscal year that it's done accordingly. Right,
You'd have to be Superman to do that, so.
you know. Thank you.
Anything else?
Move to adjourn,
second,
All those in favor?
55.
Oh, that has to be on?
happy 4th of